But something else had arrived. Something small but powerful hope. Not the kind sold by hospitals or buried in medical bills, but the kind that lived in quiet moments and trembling toes. The kind that made Logan want to believe in more than science. He looked at Alma, truly looked, and saw no tricks, only wisdom. And he looked at Micah, a boy from the street, now a guide. "I don't know how to thank you," Logan said, voice raw. "You don't have to," Alma replied. "Just keep listening to her. Her body will tell you what it needs when it's ready. And if you trust that, she'll go farther than you think." Sierra leaned forward, her face lit with something new. Light. "I want to come back tomorrow," she said quietly. Logan smiled for the first time in weeks. "Then we will." Micah walked over, gently pulling the blanket around Sierra's legs. "They'll feel tired tonight." "That's a good sign," she nodded. "Tired is better than nothing." Alma walked them to the door as the last light faded. She placed a soft cloth in Logan's hands. "For her feet tonight, so they remember." He took it like a sacred object, fingers closing over it slowly. Then he looked down at Sierra, who was still smiling. They stepped outside together, back into the cool air. The city hadn't changed, but something inside them had. Logan no longer felt like a man dragging the weight of loss. He was still afraid. Still uncertain. But he wasn't alone in the dark anymore. Logan didn't push the wheelchair. Sierra moved it herself, slowly, carefully. Her hands trembled on the rims, but she was trying, and that changed everything. Micah walked beside her, not speaking, just watching her with quiet pride. The streetlights flickered on one by one like stars lighting up for her. Each one felt like a whisper from the universe. "Keep going." She paused once, looked down at her feet, and whispered, "I'm doing it." Logan crouched beside her, heart bursting through every rib. "You are," he said, touching her arm gently. "I'm so proud of you." Sierra smiled. Not a small, polite one, but real, glowing. It made the whole block feel warmer somehow. The time they reached the car, Sierra looked tired, but not worn down. She looked fulfilled, like someone who had reclaimed a piece of herself. Logan helped her into the seat, laying the cloth on her lap like a treasure. He didn't need science to tell him what just happened. He saw it in her eyes. She had hope again. "Micah," Logan said, turning to the boy before closing the door. "I want to help you. You don't belong on the street." But Micah shook his head, hands stuffed in his two big coat pockets. "I'm okay. I stay close to Alma. She makes sure I'm safe. But maybe I'll come visit your daughter again." Logan didn't press. He just nodded, hand on Micah's shoulder. "Whenever you want," he said. "Our home is open." Micah looked up, and for the first time his face softened. "I think Sierra's strong. Stronger than she knows." Logan smiled. "She gets that from her mom." They drove home in quiet, but not the sad kind anymore. The kind of quiet that lets light in, that holds space for something new. Logan glanced at Sierra through the mirror. Her eyes weren't fixed on curbs or cracks this time. She was looking out at the sky, watching it change. That night, he tucked her in like he always did. Only this time, she didn't turn away or curl into herself. She whispered, "Daddy, I think I'm gonna walk one day." And Logan, sitting at the edge of her bed, whispered back, "I believe you, baby. I believe with everything I've got." The next morning came with gold streaks through the window. Sierra sat up on her own, reaching for the cloth Alma gave. She placed it on the floor, then slowly lowered her feet onto it. No movement today. But she wasn't disappointed. She simply nodded, touched her knees, and said, "Tomorrow." Logan watched from the doorway, coffee forgotten in his hand. He wasn't looking at a girl in recovery anymore. He was looking at a warrior, a light, a miracle unfolding. Each effort she made was a step toward a future rewritten, and every heartbeat screamed the same thing: don't stop. They returned to Alma's 2 days later, Sierra eager. This time she tried to stand with help, and her legs shook. But she laughed instead of crying, holding Logan's hands. Alma nodded, calm as ever. The tremble is life returning. She's waking up from the inside. They stayed longer that time. Alma taught Logan how to massage the joints, how to speak gently to muscles that forgot how to listen. She gave Sierra small challenges: buttons to press with her feet, and a journal to write what she felt every day. Your body speaks, she said. Write what it says. Each session brought something new: a twitch, a warmth, a dream. And slowly, Sierra's legs started to obey her again. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough to believe. Enough to know the future wasn't closed. It was just waiting. Logan started reading to her again every night. Stories of climbers, runners, explorers, people who refused to quit. Sierra listened like they were blueprints for her own journey. One night she said, "They didn't let fear win. I won't either." And Logan nearly cried. Again. Word spread slowly. Neighbors noticed. Nurses whispered, "Did you hear? The billionaire's daughter, she's improving." Some said it was a miracle. Others said it was impossible. Logan didn't bother explaining. He just smiled and thought of a barefoot boy behind a dumpster. Micah visited again the following week, this time with fresh clothes. Logan had sent someone to find him gently, quietly. He wore new sneakers and a warm jacket, but his eyes were the same. He sat on the floor as Sierra practiced standing. He cheered without shouting. He smiled without needing praise. Sierra stood longer that day, 3 whole seconds. The room clapped. Alma nodded. Logan laughed, eyes wet. And Sierra? She said just 4 words. That felt like flying. Micah grinned. Told you were strong. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. The next week was harder than the last. Sierra's muscles ached more now. Not because she was getting worse, but because she was trying more. Each session left her drained, sweaty, frustrated by how little her legs obeyed. Alma watched quietly, never rushing, never promising miracles. Progress isn't a straight line, she'd say. It's a heartbeat, up and down. Logan tried to stay upbeat, but even he had limits. There were nights he sat in his car outside their home, fists clenched, not in anger, but helplessness. That ache a parent feels when they can't carry their child's pain themselves. But every time he walked through the door, he smiled for her. They added new routines, gentle stretches, water therapy, light massage. Sometimes Sierra laughed. Other times she screamed into pillows. Micah started coming every Friday, always with a quiet joke or snack. He never asked for thanks, never made it about him. But Logan noticed Sierra worked harder when Micah was there. One day, Sierra fell. Just a slip. But it hit her like a wall. She lay on the mat, eyes clenched, refusing to speak. "I'm done," she whispered. "My legs will never work." Logan knelt beside her, but didn't say she was wrong. He just held her hand. "Then we rest today." "That's okay." Alma helped too. She never brushed off Sierra's pain. "Your body remembers trauma," she explained. "And so does your spirit. Some days will feel like failure, but that doesn't erase the days before." Micah said nothing, just set a little folded paper crane beside her. It had the word "still" written on its wing. By the next session, Sierra was back up. Slower, quieter, but steady. Her spirit had dents, but it wasn't broken. She started talking more during stretches, about her mom, her school, her dreams. She said she wanted to learn to run again. Not fast, just enough. "Enough to chase the ice cream truck this summer," she said. Logan laughed. "That's a perfect goal." Then he thought about something bigger. He called an architect friend and asked about ramps, rails, open halls. If this could help Sierra, maybe it could help others too. An idea began to form. A center, maybe. A space for healing. Sierra's progress became steadier. Small, beautiful wins. She stood for 10 seconds one morning, no support. Later, she cried, but not from pain, from joy, from shock. Alma hugged her tightly. "Your legs are waking up, little bird." Logan just stood back, hands over his mouth, overwhelmed. Still, reality didn't go easy on them. There were bills. Doctor visits, tests that gave no new answers, and always the fear. What if she regressed? What if this was all temporary? But Logan stopped chasing certainty. He chose presence. He chose today. Micah one day didn't show up. No call, no note. Sierra asked 3 times where he was. Logan made calls, drove by Alma's place. Nothing. Finally, Alma looked Logan in the eyes and said gently, "His world is different. Sometimes it pulls him away." Sierra didn't cry. She just folded another paper crane, wrote "return" on its wing, and left it by the window. 3 days later, Micah showed up again, limping slightly. "I got into something dumb," he said, eyes low. Sierra didn't scold. She hugged him. Logan talked to him that night, really talked, asked about where he stayed, who took care of him. Micah shrugged. "I take care of me." Logan shook his head. "Not anymore." He made calls the next day. Discreet, respectful, sincere. Within a week, Micah had a room in a group foster home, a good one with warm staff and good meals. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. Micah didn't say much, but Logan saw the difference. He walked straighter, slept easier, smiled more. Sierra began walking with braces, slow, unsure, but real. Each step felt like thunder, like music only they could hear. She fell sometimes, yes, and bruised her knees, but she got back up faster each time. Every scar became part of her story. At school, she returned to class part-time. Kids stared at first. Some asked stupid questions. But Sierra held her head high. Micah walked her to the gate on the first day like a big brother. She squeezed his hand before going in. Logan stood watching from the car, heart tight with awe. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were rebuilding, rewriting, and every cracked sidewalk they rolled over before now felt like conquered ground. There were still therapies, setbacks, bad days. But now Sierra faced them with fire in her heart. She no longer wished for what she'd lost. She dreamed forward. And Logan? He never stopped dreaming with her. He filed paperwork to open the healing center. He called it Still Wings. Sierra chose the name, a tribute to Alma, to Micah, to paper cranes, and quiet hope. The mission? Free care. Ancient and modern therapies. Place where no child would be left behind because they couldn't pay. They opened the doors one fall morning, soft light pouring in. Sierra was there, walking slowly with her braces. Micah cut the ribbon with her, scissors shaking in his hands. Logan gave a speech he barely finished, voice breaking, because this wasn't charity, it was gratitude. It was legacy. The ribbon had been cut, but Logan didn't feel like a founder. He felt like a father who barely made it through the storm. Still Wings wasn't just a name. It was a pulse, steady and patient. He sat near the window every morning, coffee in hand, watching Sierra shuffle toward the therapy room, brace by brace. Each step was slow, sometimes painful, but each one was proof of something that couldn't be bought. The center wasn't crowded yet, just a few families each week, but every visitor brought with them a weight, a quiet longing that Logan now recognized all too well. Alma remained the heart of the place. She arrived before the sun each morning, humming softly. Her hands seemed to know what muscles needed before words were spoken. She treated the wealthy and the homeless the same, with a nod. a smile and silence that held space for healing. Micah had become her shadow, not in a childish way, but like a student watching a master. He swept the floors, folded towels, fetched warm water. But more than that, he listened. Really listened. Sometimes that was the most healing thing of all. It was during one of those quiet afternoons, when clouds hung low and the rain whispered against the roof, that a new child came in. A boy named Eli, 7 years old, whose legs were curled beneath him like twisted roots. His mother looked like she hadn't slept in days. She held his form with practiced gentleness, as if the world was always too rough, too loud. Alma greeted them without flinching, guiding them to the back room. Logan watched from his office, memories thick in his chest. Sierra peeked in that afternoon, curious. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside Eli on the mat. No words. Just her presence, calm and quiet. By the time Alma finished the session, Eli had smiled once. It was enough. The days moved slowly at still wings. Therapy didn't follow dramatic arcs. It followed rhythms, stretches, adjustments, breathing, waiting. Sometimes a breakthrough came after hours of nothing. Sometimes it didn't come at all. Logan started keeping a journal, not of finances or plans, but of moments, glances, quiet victories. He noted the way Sierra laughed more easily now, the way Micah opened up to the new kids, bit by bit, and how Alma, with all her knowledge, still walked humbly. One evening, the lights had dimmed and the patients had gone. Logan found Alma in the courtyard, her hands deep in soil. She was planting something, small, fragile. He knelt beside her without asking what it was. Something that takes time, she said softly. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Logan spoke. "Do you think this will last?" She didn't answer right away, just kept patting the earth. Then she said, "Everything worth healing takes patience. If it ends tomorrow, it will still have mattered." That night, Logan went home and found Sierra at the piano. She wasn't playing anything fancy, just notes, spaced wide apart, but each one held weight, felt deliberate. She looked up and said, "It's how I walk now, slow but strong." He sat beside her, didn't speak, just listened. The seasons turned. More families came. Some stayed, others couldn't, but they left with a little more hope. Logan started a scholarship fund quietly, under Micah's name. The boy protested at first, then grew into the honor. He still wore mismatched socks, but now he stood taller. One afternoon, Logan found a note on his desk. It was from Sierra, just one line. "You gave me my legs, Daddy." He held it for a long time, eyes wet, chest full, not with pride, but with relief. He hadn't saved her. He'd just stayed long enough for her to rise. Still Wings wasn't famous. It wasn't sleek, but its walls held stories that would never make the news. Every time a child took their first step, someone cried quietly. Sometimes it was Logan, sometimes Alma, sometimes the child. It never stopped mattering. One evening, long after the therapy mats had been rolled away, Logan stayed late to close up, locking each door with care. He paused at the last hallway, lights off, shadows long, when he heard soft footsteps behind him. Not rushed, not hesitant, just present. He turned, expecting Micah or Sierra, but it wasn't either. It was a woman. Mid-30s, soaked from the rain, coat clinging to her frame. In her arms was a boy, maybe 5, maybe 6, silent and still. His limbs hung limp. His eyes barely opened. "I was told to come here," she said. Her voice cracked, worn like gravel underwater. "They said this place doesn't turn people away." Logan stepped closer, heart beating faster. She added, almost in a whisper, "They said, you help the ones no one else can." The boy let out a low moan. Pain or exhaustion, he couldn't tell. Logan didn't ask questions. He reached for the child gently, The woman hesitated, then let go. Trust. Unspoken. Immediate. As Logan carried the boy into the warmth of the center, he didn't know yet what they were facing. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Somehow, this child, this moment, was going to change everything again. And this time, it wouldn't just be Sierra who needed saving. It would be Logan himself. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to smash that thumbs up and hit subscribe for more unforgettable, emotional, and viral true stories. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Sir, I know how to make your daughter walk again. The voice came from somewhere behind the dumpster, soft but unshaken. Logan Pierce froze. He'd walked this sidewalk outside the hospital 100 times, but never with his daughter's wheelchair, creaking beside him. Never with her silence clawing at his heart louder than the city noise. Sierra was only 10, but her eyes held years of sadness. She didn't cry anymore. Didn't ask questions, she just stared, at curbs, at cracks, at lives that moved while hers didn't. Her legs hadn't worked since the crash, and doctors had politely killed every hope he clung to. Spinal trauma, irreparable. Learn to adapt, they had said. Adapt to this? He tightened his grip on the wheelchair handles, jaw clenched, but that voice came again, closer this time. Sir, please, I can help her. Logan turned fast, ready to tell off whoever thought this was a joke. But instead, he saw a barefoot boy no older than Sierra, skin dark as night, coat torn at the sleeves, standing beside a pile of wet cardboard. His face was thin, too thin, like he hadn't had a full meal in weeks. One shoe was missing, the other too big. His fingers were red from cold, but his eyes, they weren't hungry or scared. They were focused, like he didn't see Logan as a billionaire, or Sierra as broken. Just a man with a child who still had a chance. What did you say? Logan asked, voice low, sharp. The boy took a step forward. My name's Micah. I saw her yesterday. You brought her out of the hospital and pushed her past me. She looked sad, like her legs forgot something important. My grandma helped me when I couldn't walk. She can help her too. Logan blinked, thrown by the calm certainty in the boy's voice. This is insane, he muttered. You don't know anything about her. I don't need to, Micah said simply. She doesn't charge, she doesn't promise, she only tries, and sometimes that's all it takes. Sierra's voice came soft from the chair. Daddy, can we go? It was the first time she'd spoken in days. Logan looked down, heart split between instinct and desperation. No tricks, he said firmly. The moment it feels off, we leave. Micah nodded once as if they'd sealed a deal. He turned without another word and started walking. Logan hesitated. The hospital lights behind him felt sterile now, like they belonged to a world that had given up. He pushed Sierra's chair after the boy, the wheels bumping over cracks. Every step away from the sidewalk felt heavier until they turned a corner and stepped into a part of the city Logan hadn't seen in years. The air changed. Logan felt it first, not colder, but quieter, as if the city noise had stopped at the edge of this street out of respect. Micah moved without hesitation, weaving through alleys and forgotten blocks. Sierra sat upright now, her hands gripping the blanket in her lap. She wasn't afraid. She was listening to something deeper than words. Old fences leaned into crooked sidewalks, paint peeling off brick walls, spray-painted angels and names faded on rusted doors long abandoned. Logan kept pushing, his mind screaming turn back, but his heart whispering, wait. Micah didn't look back. He just kept walking, like this wasn't strange at all. Like leading strangers to his grandmother was something he'd done before. After 10 minutes, they reached a gate barely hanging by its hinges. Micah stopped and turned, pointing toward a narrow dirt path beyond. She's up there, he said softly, voice lower now, almost sacred. Logan stared into the wooded trail, unsure what lay ahead. But behind him was a hospital full of no's, and Sierra had asked to come. They moved through the trees slowly, leaves crunching beneath rubber tires. Every bump made Logan wince, but Sierra never complained once. Micah whistled a soft tune, something old, something peaceful. Birds stirred above as if they recognized the melody, and with each turn in the path, something inside Logan began to thaw. The woods opened to a small clearing, and there stood a house. It wasn't much, weathered wood, a crooked porch, smoke curling from a chimney, but it was alive. It breathed in the cold air like it belonged there. A dog barked once from under the porch, then laid back down. Micah stepped aside. "She's waiting," he said, as if time meant nothing here. The door opened before they could knock. An old woman stood there, tall, wrapped in a heavy shawl, eyes clear as glass. She didn't smile, didn't speak. She just looked at Sierra, then at Logan. Then she stepped aside. "Come in if your heart's ready," she said. Micah nodded to Logan, who pushed the chair forward without a word. The warmth hit instantly. Herbs, burning wood, something that smelled like cinnamon. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars, feathers, and folded cloth. A fire crackled quietly in a stone hearth beside a hand-woven rug. The woman closed the door behind them and knelt in front of Sierra. "You don't have to believe in me," she said gently. "Just believe in yourself again." Sierra blinked, unsure, but not afraid. Logan stood still, hands on the chair, watching every move. The woman touched nothing. She just held her hands near Sierra's knees. "Your legs forgot their purpose," she whispered. "Let's help them remember." Sierra's lips parted like she might speak, but no sound came. Only tears. She wasn't crying from pain. It was something else. Something soft. Something like recognition. The woman's name, they learned, was Alma. She didn't ask questions, didn't preach, just listened, to the room, to Sierra's breath. Then she placed a folded cloth beneath Sierra's feet and began to hum. Micah sat cross-legged on the floor, silent, watching. Logan lowered himself slowly into a wooden chair, heart pounding. This wasn't medicine. It wasn't science. It wasn't supposed to make sense. But Sierra wasn't flinching. Her shoulders had relaxed. For the first time in a year, her feet weren't cold. Alma lit a candle with a match, holding it in her palm. "Fire reminds the body of its own heat," she said. Then she spoke a name, not Sierra's, not Logan's, something older. A word that felt like it belonged to the earth beneath them. The flame flickered and Sierra closed her eyes. Logan leaned forward, unsure what to believe, but he didn't speak. Didn't interrupt. He just watched as Sierra sat still, a single tear tracing her cheek. Alma whispered one more word, and then silence filled the room. Not heavy, not final, just full. Like the air had shifted. Then Sierra opened her eyes. She looked at her legs, not with expectation, but with wonder. She moved one toe. Just slightly. Logan gasped, louder than he meant to, but Alma only nodded. "That's the beginning," she said. Logan couldn't speak. He couldn't move. He stared at Sierra's foot as if it had just whispered a secret. She was staring too, her lips parted, breath caught halfway in her chest. Micah didn't cheer or smile. He just nodded, like he already knew. And Alma, with hands resting in her lap, closed her eyes and listened. "It's not magic," she said softly, barely louder than the fire. "It's memory. The body holds it, even when the mind lets go." Logan leaned forward, his voice a rasp. She moved her toe. Alma looked at him, not surprised, only kind. She remembered part of herself. And now we help her remember the rest. Gently. Carefully. Sierra's voice came next, thin but steady. I felt warm, all the way down. Her hands touched her legs, as if they belonged to someone else. She blinked fast, trying to hold back tears, but one escaped anyway. Logan caught it with his thumb, his own eyes already misting. I saw it, baby, he whispered. I saw it. You did it. Micah rose and walked to the window, pulling the curtain slightly aside. Outside, the sky had turned a soft lavender, day slipping into hush. He said nothing, just watched the trees sway in rhythm. Logan studied the boy again, how still he stood, how old his silence felt. How did you know to bring us here? He asked, voice tender. Micah didn't turn around. She helped me once, when I was 5. My legs were broken. Doctors said I'd walk, but not right. They gave up fixing me before they started. But Alma didn't. She never promised a cure. She just believed I could become more. And slowly, I did. Not all at once, but enough. Alma touched Sierra's knee, her hands light as dust. Would you like to try again? She asked, the warmth never leaving her voice. Sierra looked at her father, then nodded. Yes. Please. Not to walk, just to try. That's all. Logan moved closer, kneeling by the chair, holding her hand in both of his. Alma placed a small cloth beneath each foot this time. Soft things help the body trust itself, she said. We start with softness. Sierra closed her eyes, her fingers tightening around Logan's. Micah sat again on the rug, his back straight, breathing slow. The room held its breath with them, the air full of gentle expectation. A minute passed, then another, and then Sierra's other foot twitched. Not much, but enough. She gasped, a tiny sound that sounded like laughter underwater. Logan clutched her hand like it might disappear. You did it again, he whispered, voice cracking. Baby, you did it again. I felt it, Sierra said, like something's waking up in there. Alma didn't cheer, didn't exclaim. She simply touched Sierra's shoulder and said, Then we'll help it wake slowly. It's not a race, it's a return. And you're already on your way. Outside, the wind shifted, brushing through the trees like a lullaby. Micah stood and quietly placed another log on the fire. Logan wiped his face with his sleeve, no longer caring if he cried. The pain, the weight, the helplessness, it hadn't vanished.